I think ending human trafficking is going to take a lot of collaboration and partnership. We need stronger laws at state level, and we really do need more funding to support community-based services.
When you have the Trafficking Victims Protection Act or from the United Nations thinking about organized crime, these are what we call top-down efforts, government definition, grants and federal agencies responding to the crime. And while that's good and that is important, what got put aside were survivor voices in the articulation of how those crimes and human rights abuses were defined. Like, that's just an omission, maybe not deliberate, but that was the ways in which our first definitions of human trafficking arose.
I think in the United States, early anti-trafficking efforts began in the late 1990s to really stand up and support the passage of the federal law around human trafficking, as well as the UN protocol in 2000. And so there were a lot of early organizations that were already defining what severe exploitation looked like and trying to set up standards for supporting victims in particular. As far as it relates to the United States and coordinated efforts, that was really in 2003 to 2005 when the federal government began sending different states grants to be able to shore up their training of law enforcement around this crime because it was such a new crime, and also support at that time services for foreign national individuals. And so states like Colorado began receiving some of these funds in 2005 to really shore up those particular responses, especially when this was a federal crime and states were trying to figure out how to prosecute it at state level.
One of the things that has been a big shift is the creation of the Colorado Human Trafficking Council, which was established in 2014 through legislation. And so the legislative body created this Colorado Human Trafficking Council to bring stakeholders and experts to the field together to talk about how we address human trafficking holistically in the state. So there's 35 members. They come from all different types of sectors. So we have law enforcement, we have prosecutors, we have anti-trafficking organizations, victim service providers, legal services, immigrant services, academia, faith-based organization, and also anti-trafficking organizations that are rooted in community. And one of the most important things that we have in the council is that we have survivor representatives, and we've had that from the very beginning, recognizing that of the sea change that survivors can and should have a seat at the table and need to be there.
We've also been able to really strengthen our state laws around human trafficking, and that could not have happened without so many different agencies at the table. Because when you talk about a response to human trafficking, you're talking about a lot of systems, and you're talking about grassroots, nonprofit, community-based organizations. So you're talking about criminal justice systems, you're talking about systems set up to support minors, systems set up to support adults, systems set up to support individuals that are US citizens or those with or without documentation from other countries. So you've got all of these different players that are trying to respond to one individual sometimes, or a group of individuals who have really experienced trafficking and need a lot of cross-agency collaboration.
Beyond the council kind of coming together, there's also been a pretty strong growth in anti-trafficking collaborations across the state, which has been really exciting to see. There was a few sprinkled here and there about 7 years ago, and now it just has blossomed to 20 plus anti-trafficking groups all across the state in all different parts, and they all have a different flavor. That some of them are community-led by volunteers, kind of goes back to my heart and my roots in the anti-trafficking field. And there's others who are led by district attorneys' offices and maybe have more of a law enforcement focus. There's others that are led by, child welfare and human services. And all of these people come together to try to think big picture, like how do we address human trafficking in our state what policies need to change to make it easier for us to convict traffickers, or to make sure that, that sex trafficking of a child is a form of child abuse and neglect and should be an issue that Human Services takes into consideration, that wage theft is a entree into labor trafficking, and pretty much all labor trafficking cases have some form of wage theft. So how do we strengthen our wage theft laws? How do we train people across the state systematically on this issue of human trafficking so we can create a common language and a common understanding of this crime?
So I do think in Colorado, partnerships have really evolved, and we still have a long ways to go so that we're working towards some of the same goals. But I think at this stage, we have, in the past 17 years, really changed a lot to be more supportive.